Happy October, probably my favorite month of the year. While I don't have a formal Halloween special planned, something pretty spooky did come out near the end of last month which I want to talk about. That is of course the new Channel 4 horror series Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, based on the web series of the same name. If you haven't seen it before, I strongly recommend you search up the web series on YouTube. I will say it's not for the faint of heart though, so be warned. However, if you haven't seen it and you want to watch this video anyway, let me give you a basic premise of the web series. Three main characters, who don't have names but are often referred to as Yellow Guy, Red Guy, and Duck, get visited by different strange characters who attempt to teach the three about different life lessons including time, creativity, and computers. As the songs and lessons continue, a darker subtext emerges from them, often leading to a horrific climax. The web series received a lot of praise due to being extremely effective in both its comedic and horror elements, and having an extremely high production value by the standards of a YouTube show. Since the videos were posted, a lot of people have deeply analyzed the show, looking at the themes, characters, and what exactly is happening in the universe of the series. I have my own interpretation of the series, which has only become more complicated since the release of the television show, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. Me personally, I really loved the web series for Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. I loved how dark, absurd, and surprisingly layered it was in its production themes and lore. I don't know why, but I really have an appreciation for adult-oriented Sesame Street and Muppet parodies. That includes Wonder Chosen, Avenue Q, Meet the Feebles, you name it. I even watched a puppet porno parody called Let My Puppets Come at one point. Search that one up out of curiosity. It's really not as bad as it sounds, but don't exactly expect it to get you and your partner warmed up, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's a different video for a different day. When I heard Don't Hug Me I'm Scared was getting a television show, I was pumped. Seeing a web series I really loved being turned into a TV show made me nostalgic for when the same thing happened to my other favorite web shows like Happy Tree Friends and Pure Ownage in the early 2000s. I could easily see Don't Hug Me I'm Scared translating well into a TV series due to its high production value, outstanding writing, and extra lore that could be explored. While the web series did wrap up the story pretty nicely, it unsurprisingly left a lot open to interpretation. Going into the show, I didn't expect my questions to be answered so much as I expected more questions to be raised. Thankfully, I got my wish in that regard. The setup for this show is essentially the same as the web series. The three main characters sit around and do something mundane until a new character comes in and attempts to teach them something through an upbeat song. The lessons in this series are about jobs, death, family, friendships, transportation, and electricity. Also like the web series, there are 6 episodes of this show, not counting the unaired pilot called Wakey Wakey, which as far as I know, hasn't been released publicly, although one of the scenes has been leaked. Each episode gets progressively darker as the series continues. It also features the same setting, puppets, voice actors, and crew, albeit at a much larger scale. In other words, this show is basically the same as the web series, with the one exception being that the episodes are 22 minutes long instead of 3 to 8 minutes. If you're a big fan of the web series but are skeptical about this new series, I can almost guarantee that you'll be satisfied with the end product. With that said, how does a 22-minute format affect the structure of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared? Every episode of the web series was primarily focused around a song, with the one exception perhaps being the 6th episode. So unless the TV show was going to be a 22-minute opera every episode, the format was going to have to change a little bit. Thankfully, the show finds a very clever way of doing this. While it usually sticks to one overarching topic per episode, there are multiple songs throughout the episode that relate to different aspects of that topic. For example, the first episode of the series is about jobs. The first song in the episode is about choosing your job, the second song is about eating lunch from a vending machine, the third song is about dealing with work stress, and it ends with a reprise of the first song. Every episode also has a totally different song or skit for the end credits. Of course, with this show being as absurd as it is, it can follow the formula to a T or deviate from it depending on which episode you're watching. Much like older Adult Swim shows like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Don't Hug Me I'm Scared very much makes up the rules of its universe as it goes along, which I really appreciate. There are a ton of musical numbers in this series and they all sound great. Oddly enough, the only one I wasn't that big on was the show's theme song. It's still not bad, and they do change up the last verse of the song in every episode, which is pretty funny, but it certainly isn't as catchy as the other songs in the series. Even though there is a lot of music in the series, the show also has a lot of scenes that aren't musical too. This is much different from the web series, which usually only had a brief scene or two without music, with again the one exception being the 6th episode. Personally, I love the contrast here, and this is what elevates the television show to being even better than the web series in my opinion. I love the characters of Yellow Guy, Red Guy, and Duck, and I always wanted to see more scenes in the web series of them interacting and playing off of each other. This series delivers on that desire of mine while still giving us the incredibly catchy songs with warped morals that made the original series so great to begin with. Even though it's probably apparent just by looking at the footage I'm showing on the screen, but I want to take a moment to praise the technical aspects of this series as well. I'm going to assume they still had access to the original sets, as everything here looks exactly the same as it did on YouTube. If they did have to recreate the sets, they did so very immaculately. The puppet work here is outstanding as always, and the cast, old and new, did a fantastic job voice acting their respective characters. I always felt Red Guy's voice sounded eerily similar to that of I Hate Everything, with a little bit less energy than Alex. Of course, that makes it even funnier to me. One thing I wasn't expected when I started watching this series, however, was how varied the presentation was going to be. There were a few episodes that featured animation in the YouTube series, such as Computers and Dreams, but by no means was it the norm for the episodes. Here, every single episode contains a scene or a song that drops the usual puppet work in favor of completely different animation styles. Whether that be 2D animation, 3D animation, claymation, or a combination of all three alongside the puppetry, this show never fails to give you something new to look at, even while sticking to its very loose formula. Each one of these segments look phenomenal and are elevated by the already great writing and bizarre atmosphere of the show. Much like the web series, there's always something in the foreground and background of almost every shot, making the show infinitely rewatchable as you pick up on more of the smaller details. Now that I've given a few of my general thoughts, I'd like to go into a little bit of my interpretation of the show. I should state that, while watching the YouTube series is not necessary for watching the television show, I do think it's a good preamble and can give you a small taste of what to expect. This will be far from an in-depth analysis of every scene or every episode even, but I will give my overall thoughts. First off, let me get into what I think the overall message of the show is, which is something I've thought about for years. Back in 2015, I remember seeing an interview with the creators of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, Becky Sloan and Joe Pelling. This interview had one quote that always stuck out to me. After being asked what the creators thought about the numerous interpretations surrounding their series, Becky responded with these words: "We have read a lot of theories online about what it all means, and they are all correct." That might sound like a cop-out answer at first, but I actually think it's much more telling than it sounds. Allow me to explain. Every episode of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared features the main three being greeted by a new character who attempts to teach them a lesson about a different topic. As the lessons continue, they become darker as the three main characters begin to question the legitimacy of the lessons as well as the teachers who are teaching them. However, the more they try to deviate from their path, the more an external force attempts to put them back to their regular setting and continue forcing the lessons down their throat. This is what I feel the main theme of the show is in general: indoctrination. All of the lessons that the main three characters are being taught are from the point of view of those who are teaching them. Rarely, if ever, are Yellow Guy, Red Guy, and Duck asked what their perspective on the topics are, and even if they are immediately shut down. The most famous example of this is in the web series, where they're asked to pick their favorite colors. Red Guy picks green, only to be told that green is not a creative color. When the characters start to realize the darker implications and flaws behind what the seemingly innocent lessons are, something happens and everything goes back to the status quo in order to prepare them for the next lesson. Because of this, whenever Becky Sloan said that the fan theories she read online are all correct, it really plays into what the actual moral of the show is, which is to think for yourself. This show encourages you to look deeper and try to interpret things from your own perspective. If we ever did get a full matter-of-fact explanation from the creators about what it all means and what exactly is going on, it would kind of go against the main idea of what Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is trying to convey. Maybe your interpretation of a scene is different from what the original creators had in mind, and maybe it isn't. The point is that you thought about it and didn't let someone else try to tell you what it means, unlike these false prophets in Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, who try to push their ideologies onto the main characters. In the later episodes of the show, the curtain is pulled back a bit to give us a little bit more of the lore of the series, but as I've previously established, this only serves to raise more questions rather than to give us definitive answers. I have my own interpretations of what the ending means, as well as the specific lessons in each episode, but this video is meant to serve as more of a general overview than a full interpretation. I also want to give myself more time to think about it, since I've only seen the series once so far. Maybe I can get into more in-depth thoughts a little bit later down the line if you guys enjoy this video, but for now, I'll leave it kind of open. One thing I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt is that Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is an amazing series. I try not to get too excited for many things because I've been disappointed by many TV shows, movies, and games more times than I can count. Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is one of the few cases where I allowed myself to go in with extremely high hopes, and this show met every single one of my expectations. The music is phenomenal, the puppetry and animation are amazing, the voice acting is just as good as it ever was, and the subtext of the show is just as fun to explore as it ever was when the series debuted on YouTube. It's funny, horrific, dark, unsettling, deep, thought-provoking, and extremely clever. If it wasn't for Better Call Saul finishing its run earlier this year, I would easily call Don't Hug Me I'm Scared my favorite television show of 2022, out of what I've seen. You really do owe it to yourself to check this out if you haven't and you think you could stomach it. While it's unclear if the series creators have intention of continuing for a second season, I would be totally on board for anything this creative team throws at us at this point. By all means, bring it on. Special thanks to Hilly and Brand for supporting this channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support me as well, follow the links in the video description to donate to my channel on Patreon or PayPal. Also be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more videos if you feel so inclined. Also, join my Discord server to talk to me and a few of my other subscribers. There's lots of cool people in there, and the community keeps on getting larger, so come and join in on the fun. Until next time, let's all agree to never be creative again.